Hello, and welcome to Starts and Grafts. I'm Conor Fogg, and each week I'm joined by an emerging artist to discuss the highs and lows of forging a creative career during a global pandemic. We're shaking things up a little bit this week, as I'll be chatting to not one but two early career creatives, so let's see how this goes. But I'm joined by Sam Toller and Josh Barnet, co-founders of Onsen Presents, which I'll be finding out a little bit more about during the episode. They also seem to be working on a ridiculous amount of projects beyond that, which we'll be discussing as well. Sam and Josh, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, how's it going? Lovely to be here.
How are you both doing? Where are you recording from?
I'm recording from a shed in North London, which is where I live, but it's very artsy. Yeah, we were just talking before we started the podcast. Apparently Roald Dahl used to live in a shed, so I'm in good company.
That's where you're taking inspiration from.
Yeah, for sure.
You say a shed, I mean, it's got like
Yeah,
proper walls and books and things.
Fitted out shed.
It's my dad's grand designs project. He couldn't build an entire house, so he just built a really, really, really nice shed instead. But yeah, no, it is. Shed doesn't quite do it justice, but yeah, it's lovely. And Josh is just round the corner, but in a real bedroom with a toilet next door to him.
Less excitingly, in an actual house.
Yeah, with actual windows. But you've got a brew. You look pretty comfortable. You look ready to get going, which I'm excited about. How are you finding this lockdown, guys? Lockdown number 3.
I think, like everyone, it's like we're dying for it to be done. But I think that for me personally, I'm happy to just continue the lockdown for, I know this sounds controversial, but for however long it takes until it just means that we don't have to go into another one again. Like, we're here now, like, we're in the lockdown. We should have just stayed in the lockdown last summer, and then we wouldn't be in this position like the Aussies. And so I'm kind of all for a lockdown until it means we can just get over and done with. But yeah, it has been a bit of a pain. I mean, it's just hard to schedule anything.
I've had moments of quite enjoying it, especially at the beginning where it was like, oh my God, I can just sit at home and like play this amazing Call of Duty that's just came out and do whatever I want. And then, it's like a year later and it's kind of just, wow, like if I thought I was bored of that 3 months ago. But, in that sense, you kind of, I feel like it ebbs and flows, doesn't it? And so you have like a month or two of being like, I can do whatever I want. And then that's followed by a month or two of like, oh my God, let's really do something because I'm going out of my mind. And actually in the last year, we've started this production company. We've done quite a lot of stuff and we've actually kind of, it's kept me busier than maybe I am usually when there's not an apocalypse on. So yeah.
It's needing that project, isn't it, I think?
Exactly.
But I mean, we've kind of done the dark winter. My hay fever's starting to trigger itself now, so we're getting towards the lighter, kind of brighter springtime. So that's a good sign. And obviously we've got this announcement tomorrow. Date check, it's the 21st of February today. Boris Johnson's doing a big old announcement tomorrow. Who knows what time that will take place, but we'll be all waiting eagerly for it to happen. But yeah, so let's start talking about you guys and not linger too much on the government and all that crap for now. You've just mentioned that you set up a production company, Onsen Presents, which is something that you are both heavily involved in. Let's go beyond the production company side of things. What is it exactly?
So it's a sketch company and production company. So me and Josh, our backgrounds are in film and acting. And, I think it's one of those with creative stuff, you try your hand at so many things and they all kind of inform each other.
Okay.
And so we've been talking between ourselves for years now about starting a production company because we've made short films with each other here and there. I mean, we went to secondary school with each other. And so we've been working with each other here and there for quite a while. And this kind of production company emerged out of the fact that, you can make a fantastic short film. I think as an actor I have and as a filmmaker Josh has, I've also done it as a filmmaker, but even, Ella and yourself even perhaps, I think we've all had those experiences of doing a short film and being really, really happy with that short film, amazing performances, amazing short film. And you send it to film festivals and it wins some awards and you go, oh yeah, that's great. I've got all these laurels. And then nothing happens after that. You just kind of go, all right, cool. that was that, and what happens next. And so we kind of decided that, people aren't going to watch a short film and then go, oh my God, like it was directed by a guy called Sam Toller and produced by someone called Josh Barnett. Like, let me look them up. Like, no one does that, right? Unless you're, an agent really like scraping the barrel of film festivals for like, I need to find some people to work with. But what people do look up is the production company, right? You see that kind of nice, snazzy image at the beginning of a film, and you go, oh, okay, it's made by this production company. And I've seen that logo elsewhere, and your brain kind of goes, okay, well, let me kind of look into them. And that's kind of why we called it Onsen Presents as well. We liked the idea that we could be presenting multiple different things. We aren't necessarily tied down to like we're just making films, because they do all inform each other.
In comedy especially, we wanted to kind of like have a face to a brand as well. And there's like so many examples of like successful production companies out there. Like Steve Coogan has Baby Cow, even just like Adam Sandler with like Happy Madison Films.
Yeah.
I mean, I could go on for ages about how many examples there are.
The example that we always love to use is Gordon Ramsay, isn't it?
Yeah, Gordon Ramsay, he produces all of his shows and he has a production company and he's like the founder and like one of the senior directors of it. And you wouldn't know that. That's how he's working so much.
I bet most people don't know that.
Yeah, that's how he's working so much, because everything he does, he owns. Jonathan Ross, I mean, literally, there's so many people that you think like, oh yeah, they're just a presenter. And then you find out they run the production company. It's kind of what we want as well. I think that adds kind of personality to it and like personable nature.
It's control though, isn't it? I think as well. And the idea of this podcast is we're talking to people in the early stages of their careers. And I can imagine as an actor or as a DP on a project or whatever, there's nothing more frustrating than putting all your energies into it and then being especially proud of it and then not knowing where that's going to be taken afterwards and what energy is going to be put into that from the production team behind it and making sure it gets noticed and gets seen. Well, it sounds like what you've done is taken control of the projects that you're working on. Obviously, you can collaborate with each other as well because you're obviously quite like-minded, but then push forward and be able to do that. So where does the name come from? You've talked about this brand. Where does the name come from?
That horrible naming process. I mean, you guys have got a really great one. Starts and Grass with a little bit of rhyme in there. It's lovely. We were kind of thinking, God, we should have something with like not a paradox, but like The Walking Dead, right, is kind of like an oxymoron. We were like, we need to find a really funny one of those, and we had this long list of things.
Yeah.
And we all kind of grew up in the same area, so we had loads of local references. And in the end, I really like the name Onsen. So it's actually a Japanese word. So an onsen is where it's like a public bath.
Okay.
I went to Japan a few years ago, and it's one of these places where you have to get stark naked. Like, you can't go in unless you're literally have no clothes on, right? So as a tourist, you go in and you're like, oh my God, like, especially a Western tourist is like, God, I've got to get naked in front. And it's gender split. So it's like men in one part, women in another part. So me and my girlfriend went and we were like, right, see you in an hour, like, good luck.
Hopefully.
But we really liked the sound of the name. It sounds very nice and it's kind of quite memorable. But also for us, it kind of reflected this idea of what we think comedy is, right? It's kind of like shedding everything, being really vulnerable, being like, I've got this thing that I want to show everyone. I mean, not nakedness, like a comedy, but that same thing of like, I'm really vulnerable. I want to show this thing to people, but it's scary, right? But then actually also once you get into the onsen, I was really shocked to see like a bunch of mates like my age, like my mates back home, where we'd be in the pub, but they're all like stark naked in a hot tub together, like chatting shit to each other there and making each other laugh. And I just kind of like this idea of that's kind of what comedy is, right? It's getting vulnerable and getting naked and kind of bearing your dirty laundry for everyone to see. But actually, because of that, once you get past that vulnerability, you actually kind of really open up and you're allowed to kind of, everyone gets together and has this great laugh because of that vulnerability. So that's kind of the long-winded reasoning behind that. And also it sounded really nice and we were like, that's the best thing we've got. But yeah, I think there's a good meaning behind it as well.
Kind of leave your inhibitions at the door. Let's have a laugh. Here we go, kind of thing.
Exactly.
So that's that's a great explanation of what Onsen Presents is and, the origins behind the name. What are your roles within Onsen Presents? And I don't mean characters here. I mean, what are you doing behind the scenes or in front of the camera?
So we're currently both the company directors, and we basically produce entirely all of our stuff. But we're also in development with a couple of other projects. We're looking to develop a couple formats. We're looking to continue developing the sketches which we release on a regular basis that you can check on our Instagram. We're also looking to start doing regular comedy nights once everything opens back up.
Cool.
And we're also doing like regular quiz nights and interactive nights as well. So on the horizon, there's lots of different pieces that we're kind of involved in at the moment.
I think one of the really interesting things about starting during this pandemic has been because you don't know, you kind of sit there and you go, right, we've written these sketches that we want to film next month, but stuff might not be open, and do we even film it? And so you really have, and it's worked in our favor in certain ways because everyone's at home and we're kind of like, this is a great time to be getting that stuff online. But we have really had to be like, okay, what are we going to do that kind of works? And so even this quiz that we've started doing in the last month or so, which maybe is almost a bit late. There's part of me that thinks, God, we should have been doing this when lockdown first started because that's what people are looking for. But, fate has its ways and we've done it now and it's really fun. But, is that thing of just being like, well, what can we do? Like, we're all stuck at home. But actually, this quiz thing, and we've come up with this quiz that is really unique, and we've got interactive rounds where it's like, who can send us the best video of you and your mates, like pretending to be dinosaurs or whatever, or who's got the loudest outfit, all these kind of interactive rounds. But yeah, we kind of have, we've got a lot of ideas that we want to pursue and develop. And we're in a really good stage at the moment of, each month we're kind of like, all right, this needs to take a back seat. We'll put more focus on this. Because at the moment with the pandemic, it is really like you don't know what you're going to be able to do within the next month. So it really is a case of we'll develop all of these ideas as far as we can take them. And then when we really need to decide, we push with one of them. And I think that's just kind of what it's like working at the moment.
You've just mentioned the quizzes though, and you've said, I think we might have left it a little bit too late. But I think there's a lot to be said for kind of holding out and watching how things go at the moment, because entertainment has become like fast fashion over this past year and people want it so quick. Like something gets announced on a Monday and you are watching it on the Saturday, no later than that. Do you know what I mean? It's very, very fast paced. And I think it's easy to get wrapped up in that. And we didn't set up the podcast until about October, November. And I'm thinking everybody else has already got their podcasts up and running. They've got a couple of months behind them at this point. But it gives you that chance to kind of reflect on, I don't want to sound critical, but the people that have maybe jumped the gun a little bit too quickly. And you can really take that time to hone in and figure out what it is that you actually want to do and not be doing it for the sake of it, I think. Because these formats are going to be sticking around for a long time to come. It's fascinating and it's great. I was going to ask if you wanted to get live events up and running at some point, but we don't know when that's going to happen,
exactly.
do we?
I mean, we were in talks, like literally in that break period,
right?
That we had around Christmas time to get stuff up and running. And obviously we've still got that, but it's so tough. And also, these venues, these pubs are keen because they can't really have music. They don't really want anything that people can encourage dancing and getting up and anything like that. Whereas like a quiz or a comedy night, you can stay in your table, you can have your food, you can just watch it. And I guess to some extent also kind of live music as well. But with live music, there's even still that thing where some people might want to get up and have a little dance. So
the temptation's too much.
Yeah. Whereas if no one's going to get up and like dance at a comedy night.
Well, they might at ours.
Who knows if it's an Onsen comedy night?
Yeah, that's true.
Thinking about it now, when we had that really relaxed period, I think in like September, October, whatever, the only live entertainment I actually saw was a kind of comedy magic night. I didn't see any music. I didn't really get to see much theatre. But like you said, there's a way of controlling it, isn't there? And there's a way of, you can still connect with an audience, I think. So I hope that is one of the first things that gets back up and running. But what I really enjoyed is I read somewhere that you described it as the phoenix. Onsen Presents as the phoenix that somehow rose from the ashes of 2020. And I think what better way to sum up an element of creativity and creating something. I want to link it in because you're making comedy and you've talked already about making something that you have a bit of control over and a bit of ownership, which is already right on the nose of the piece of artist advice that we've got for this week, which is from the incredible Simon Stevens, who has wrote some incredible plays such as Punk Rock, Port. Weird fun fact, I think he's like the most popular British playwright to be staged in Germany, which I really enjoyed as a fact. But his words that he kindly gave us to share on the podcast were, make the work that you would have made if it was your last week on Earth. Make the work you wish other people had made so you could have it in your life, and to your frustration, they haven't. And that sounds completely in line with the outlook that you guys have got with Onsen as a project.
Strangely, you've hit the nail even more on the head than maybe you intended to. I mean, I feel like Josh wants to say something, so I'll let him.
Yeah, no, sure. I mean, Tola and I have almost been working on scattered projects, right, for about 10 years now. And I think that truly just getting in this lockdown, and just to tie it into the Phoenix reference, we finally got to a point where we were even just developing bits and pieces, as we've just continued to do throughout our kind of friendship, but also, professional working relationship. And I just think that we did just sit there and we were like, look, let's just get ourselves out there more. Because, we would have struggled to really do anything in the lockdown. The fact we were going in and out, the fact that you could only be in your bubbles and stuff. So we were like, let's just create our own bubble, have a literal creative bubble, and just kind of work on these products to better ourselves in order to kind of grow a following, and to just, have a place where people can actually come and regularly watch the stuff that we're making. Now we're getting back into the point of actually bringing some of our older things, like some award-winning films we've got out and all that kind of stuff. And we just thought, once we can kind of lock that down, we can then move on to kind of what we really want to do, which is like collaborate with more people, find some new additional up and coming comedy talent, and just kind of showcase this whole portfolio of stuff, like from ourselves, but also these other things that we've worked on and produced.
I think it was one thing that we definitely learned from all these years of kind of making short films together, is just that thing of, you make all these short films and then there's no audience for the stuff that you make. And so now we're kind of going from the other way round of, let's build that audience first, so that then, or not even first, but let's build that audience alongside what we're doing. I mean, this is like the short films that are successful. They start their social media pages before they start doing anything. And they go, here's us writing the script, here's our first read through, and then by the time the film comes out, they've already got this following.
You've got to treat it like a business.
Exactly.
And it's mad, and
Yeah.
and all you want to really do, it's like the podcast, you just want to make something creative, but there's so many other things outside of that you've got to start considering, and it's crazy, really.
Also, going back to what you were saying about that great Simon Stevens quote about making the work that you kind of are frustrated that doesn't exist, I think is definitely something that relates to what me and Josh are doing and Onsen is doing, in the sense that there's so much comedy that me and Josh are really big fans of. Kind of 10 years ago, when like sketch shows, right? Sketch shows seem to not exist anymore. And, we've talked about it a few times, and there's things about budget, there's things about also the amount of different characters that get played, and, things about gender and race that are probably a little bit more, and rightly so, like you can't do certain things, which makes a sketch show a little bit harder. But they're still very possible. I mean, Famalam on BBC, I think, is one of my favourite things I've seen in a while, which is an all-black sketch show. And it's so hilarious. It's so politically kind of, and it's not even political, but the bits that are like so funny and genius. And anyway, but it's definitely a lot of the stuff that we're doing is out of that sense of like, this kind of comedy doesn't, like, when was the last time you watched something on Channel 4 that they pitched as a comedy that actually made you laugh out loud? Like, it's so rare these days, and that's kind of what I think we're trying to do in the long run, is to kind of be like this. We want to fill that gap that we feel is now missing a little bit.
Yeah.
And if you look at the major networks like BBC, Channel 4, etc., all of the comedy stuff they're commissioning at the moment are really short now. So like the half an hour comedy, it's not as frequent as you expect it to be. I mean, there's so many iPlayer shows that are like 10 minutes long an episode, or like 15 minutes long.
Like 21 minutes.
Yeah, or 21 minutes.
And like 21 minutes, bring it to me. Like, I am so happy with 21 minutes. That is perfect.
And so to show that we can actually tell these rounded stories, I mean, we were giving ourselves a parameter of trying to write a page sketch. Most of the times they ended up spilling over than that. But if we could get concisely down a page, not only does the parameters help your brain in thinking like efficiently as from the joke perspective, it also just helps you communicate to like anyone, a viewer, as well as someone who's maybe a bit more professional than that, like how you can really concisely tell a story and tell a joke and just nail it down to like what that sketch is about. I mean, that's just been so invaluable for us. And we often now, we'll watch sketches and the first thing we say is, it's too long. Especially on Instagram. Like, if it's 4 minutes long, it better be great. Because people, especially in the lockdown, the attention span has just gone way down. And so, look, I like a kind of slow pace, like movie from the 50s noir, don't get me wrong. But, you got to kind of go with what the zeitgeist and what audiences are watching. And it seems to be just like more concise, more,
You've just mentioned Instagram. Look at what most comedians are doing. TikToks.
Yeah.
They're wrapped up within 30 seconds and they made you laugh a couple of times in the process of that 30 seconds. There's not that long narrative that we don't necessarily need, and it's really reflective of the times. But what a lot of you do as Onsen Presents is on YouTube and it's on Instagram, and people can check it out. We'll put a link on our social media. I want to ask, how did you both get into sketch comedy?
That's an interesting one, actually. I mean, to be honest, probably Onsen, really. I mean, we kind of did a lot of short films before that. We both know that we love comedy. I mean, I did a fair amount of stand-up comedy when I was at uni, and it's something that I've always loved and been interested in.
Mm.
And even as an actor, like I love playing a serious role of a kid who's got involved in the wrong gang or whatever. But the thing that really, I mean, like a really great example for me in terms of comedy was a couple of years ago. I was at the Edinburgh Fringe playing Socrates, the Greek philosopher, in a play all about Socrates. I mean, it was a great kind of ensemble piece. So I wasn't really the main character, but I kind of was. And that's not me blowing my own ego because it matters to the story. But anyway, I was kind of like, it's that kind of feeling of being like, I'm playing this great Greek orator, and I'm kind of like I'm the main person in the name of the title of the show, like, and I do that at 2 p.m. in some room in Edinburgh. And it was great. Like, we got great reviews. It was really, really good. I somehow managed to make these sprawling monologues vaguely something worth watching so that not everyone in the room was asleep. But like 4 hours later, I'd go and see some stand-up comedy, as you do at the Fringe, and I'd be sat there and I'd just be watching like some guy who's only done stand-up comedy like 50 times, and he's getting a laugh here and there, and sometimes it's crap. But I'm looking at these guys being like, God, I don't want to be the like main character lead of the show that I'm doing. I want to be that guy making everyone laugh. Not that I don't want to, I want to do both, but it was that moment of God, actually, like, maybe it is the comedy that's the thing that really makes me go, God, I want to be doing that. And so, yeah, I think for me, that's kind of, always been about comedy. But yeah, with Onsen Presents was really the moment where we were kind of like, especially with Instagram, we weren't going to go off and make a billion short films and upload those to Instagram. So I think it matched our sensibilities and it just made sense, I guess. And it was fun, right? We were like, let's just sit around and have funny ideas and be like, oh, that would be even funnier if his mum was a lawyer, which makes notice a relevant example. But yeah,
And just to give you a funny visual of that play of Toller as well, because I went to see a rehearsal of that play, the hottest day of that year, and we were in literally like a 5x5 room, and there was no fans, and everyone was sweating buckets in shorts, and Toller had like literally like 20 bed sheets on him, sweating. So it's just the most hilarious visual in this dark room, everyone just like that, like the whole day. And then to also piggyback off what Toller was saying about how he got into it, I mean, we've always kind of gravitated towards comedy. I mean, the first things we collaborated together with were always comedy, and we were comedy leaning. But for me, I always had this interesting relationship where I don't know why, but I was maybe pushing back to the performance level a bit, because I was always interested in like really getting stuff done and made. And so it lent myself to kind of going down a producer route, and I worked at various jobs and stuff. And I was at one point, I worked in video production at a magazine called Balance Media magazine. And one of the senior editors was one of the really big warm up. He does so many shows. He'll do like Jonathan Ross. He'll do most of Graham Norton, all that kind of stuff. And me and him have gotten really well. We went to see loads of stand up together. And he really encouraged me to like do the jump of actually like doing some more performance. So I joined this improv that he recommended to me, called Monkey Toast Improv, which I would recommend, and hopefully it's still continuing like after the lockdown, because I know they were having a bit of financial issues. But it was so fascinating to really get like, that was my first kind of formalized acting training that I've ever had, and getting like the receptive feedback from my tutor, and really kind of leaning into the improv, which is kind of counterintuitive to the way that you write and produce, really encouraged me to kind of like dive into some more acting. And then that was kind of another reason why, we got in contact and we were like, let's keep doing it, let's keep putting ourselves out there, both in front of the camera and behind the camera.
Yeah, because I feel like with sketch comedy, it's not sketch comedy and just comedy in general. It's not something that we're particularly given the opportunity to explore too much when we're younger, and you don't see too many like teens or anything really exploring that. I was talking to Ella beforehand, and she was lucky enough to be part of the School of Comedy, which I think some of it aired. There was a few series that aired on Channel 4, and I remember watching that as a kid.
I remember, yeah.
Do you remember? I think like Will Poulter was in it and stuff
Yeah,
like that.
yeah, I
And I
remember
remember,
that.
but the thing was, they always played adults, and it was all like they always tended to play adults, and they were always ripping off adults, and
Yeah,
it
yeah,
was
yeah.
brilliant. But it wasn't until I went to uni that I managed to really start watching sketch comedy. I went to Leeds, and the tea lights at Leeds were brilliant, and they'd often get Durham to come over and Cambridge and stuff. But it wasn't until that chance that there were opportunities to start exploring and watching sketch comedy, because it's not. I don't, if you're from London, there's probably more chances to check into it. But across other parts of the country, it's really not the most accessible thing, or it's not the most obvious thing, I think, especially in small towns. It's very easy to go and watch a gig or kind of a piece of theatre or whatever. But sketch comedy, it's like this weird underground thing.
It's a tough one as well because you kind of need the right people, right? I think anyone who wants to be funny, can kind of go, all right, well, I'll write 10 minutes of stand up and I'll go and perform that somewhere. Whereas for the sketch comedy thing, you need at least two people, if not a few more. And finding those people is really difficult. It's definitely an experience I had when I was at university of kind of, did loads of stuff at university and went to Bristol University because I loved Simon Pegg and I was, oh my God, I'm going to basically go and like
Beat him.
follow his life plan and da 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 da. And thought I was going to come out of Bristol with like, I was going to meet two amazingly funny people who were totally on my wavelength and we'd come out and rule the world within 2 years of graduating kind of thing. And that didn't happen, sadly. But, I think you have to really work to find those people. And that's kind of what, me and Josh were talking about the other day, this funny thing about imagine if we'd started this production company when we were in secondary school, because we were friends at secondary school, but we were kind of like in separate groups a little bit. So we were always kind of looking at each other, like, oh yeah, Josh, like he makes films as well. Like, yeah, I get involved sometimes, but we were just like, imagine if we'd done that when we were 15, where would we be now? But it's funny in that way that, you had to, we have to go away and do all these other things. And then you come back and in a funny roundabout way, you go, oh, actually, maybe the guy that I needed to do that sketch comedy thing was here the whole time.
I think chemistry in comedy is so visible. Like, if you have, like, even in films, right, you can have a film and you hear that, like, Angelina Jolie didn't get along with Bradley Cooper for the whole film. I'm just using that random example, right? You'd never know because it's a drama and you get it. But you kind of got a nose for it when you've got these two comedy people and they're just not working together. And it's like, there's a little part of us is like, Toller and I have been working on like our chemistry for a long time, like longer than anyone else that I've been working with. So, that's such an underestimated thing of comedy and chemistry. It's so important, and it's kind of just like you can't make it up. It's you've either just got it or not.
On the topic of chemistry, one thing that I really do want to talk about is something that you were both involved in last year called Fever Love in the Time of Corona.
Yes.
It was a short film made as part of the Rain Dance Film Festival. Let me get this right. 60 Sexy Seconds competition. Make sure you get the seconds in there when Googling it, because I Googled accidentally 60 Sexy and it was just a disaster. It was just a disaster. But yeah. Josh, tell us a little bit more about that project and what the essence of it was.
So essentially, it was kind of at the beginning of 2020, before any pandemic or any word of anything, other than just initial kind of speculation that Wuhan had, another version of like swine flu happening there. And there was a play that Toller was in, Slam Minutes, which was held at the Vaults. I think it was in October, or I can't remember when it was, but it was like in 2019 at some point. And
it would have been in Jan, I think. Anyway, sorry, go on.
Oh, Jan? Okay, maybe it was earlier than that. Maybe it was January then of 2020. And he did a performance with Emily Martin, who was the writer of that piece. And she had told Toller that she potentially had this idea and she'd always wanted to do film and that she didn't necessarily know like where she could take it and stuff. And Toller was like, I know some people that could help you out with that and I could help you out with it as well. And so Toller approached me and said, okay, what are you doing at the moment? Like, I've got this idea. We've got a real tight turnaround on it because the deadline is going to be in February. So, we'll have to just get on it ASAP. And I had a little think of the idea and I thought like a funny little, mirroring like Chaplin-esque kind of silent film filmed on the tube it's just kind of got the parameters. It's quick, it's nice. I think it was just a little perfect thing for us to do at the time. So we basically had some initial meetings with Clemley, started developing the idea, and we just managed to just pull it off in such a quick turnaround with the three people from Onsen, including the other Sam at that time, which was another reason why, we were like, okay, we've got a thing here, we've been doing stuff together, let's continue on. So in a way, I almost owe that film a bit. It's kind of like the seed that planted what Onsen was, because it really epitomized our ability to develop an idea, turn it around, shoot it to a high quality, and get it out there and distribute it like as quickly as possible. And obviously, it was a co-production with Clemily Martin as well, who she come up with the concept and she directed it and she also starred in it.
It was also really, really good for us. Yeah, in that, I had this meeting with Clem where she kind of said, I've got this idea with this corona thing that's happening, but like people are really flirty even though they got their face masks on like public transport.
Mm.
And she kind of said it to me, and I kind of, she said, here are some things that I'm not quite sure about. And I was kind of like, well, what if, even like things of, I think there needs to be a third guy that walks on and then like she falls in love with him, and just little things where I'm like, well, what if it's a girl? What if it's a black girl? What if it's someone completely different? So it's playing with that stuff. But that thing of someone can come to us with an idea, and it's stuff that we're doing at the moment where we're working with a few comics who kind of come up to us and like, I've got this idea, and it's kind of a nugget. And when I was with Clemley, I was like, that will win. The idea you just told me with a little bit of chopping and changing, that will win the competition. And the moment when it did, and I was like, oh my God, like I'm a soothsayer. But that was really valuable for us to be like, we know now that we're really good at that, to be able to take an idea, help someone develop it, give them the resources that they need, that they don't have to make it. And then, have that faith that actually this is something really amazing that we can take forwards.
I couldn't believe when I stumbled across it. Once I knew that you guys were going to feature on the podcast, I did my kind of usual Instagram stalking kind of thing. And I found it and I was watching it. And like you just mentioned, the premise is kind of these people flirting with their eyes on the tube and they've all got masks on and there's ridiculous squelching sounds as hand sanitizers squeezed into people's hands and stuff. And I was watching it and I had to like double check the date that it had been posted so many times because it had been posted on like probably like a year ago today or something, even a bit sooner than that. And I was just thinking, no way, these guys can't have been so ahead of the curve in that sense because this is, bearing in mind, that was like filmed and put out 6 months or so before masks became mandatory on public transport.
At that point, most people they were more interested in the fact that we were shooting a film, which usually is the case with people nowadays, which is really nice actually. And that still happens all the time. We were filming outside Josh's house for our kind of Christmas, New Year's ones. And this carpool, in fact, no, a couple guys came over and like distracted us, ruined a take. We were like, oh, for God's sake. And then a car pulled up with like 2 roadmen in it. And then we're like, so we've got 3 guys over there, 2 guys over here. And they're all been like, what are you guys doing? Like, you're making a film. And we're like, well, we're trying to, but we can't be like trying to be polite, but also like quite stressed. And then I was like, all right, let's just pause for a couple minutes. And then you go over and you're like, yeah, we're making this film. Where can I see it, bro? And you're like, yeah, Onsen Presents, search up. And, it's lovely when people take that interest. And it's lovely to be able to actually, rather than go, oh, we're just making a short film, it might go to some festivals. You can go, no, like, look at this page, follow us. You'll see loads of stuff, which is really valuable. And you don't realize until you've done it and you've got that.
And another really weird thing, right, is so the behind the scenes photograph, we sometimes upload our behind the scenes photographs, but if you look, everyone in the background is like maskless and we're like all kitted out. And like that one, it will just never be like that again. I think that people will be wearing masks in the tube like indefinitely for the next couple, 10 years, I think, for sure. If it doesn't maintain to be mandatory. And so it's just so strange to think that like, even from those images that we've got as like behind the scenes, it's like it's so telling of the time. It's kind of a bit like, it is a bit mind blowing.
Like you said, the film, won an award as well, which was really lucky. But just to have that picture and to have that project and to look back on, I think you'll always look back on that and go, God, that was really nuts that we were kind of doing that before that all then came along. Did you have many projects or kind of work cancelled in 2020 at all?
I had quite a few jobs cancelled, which was pretty difficult. I do a lot of like factual entertainment stuff, and so I was scheduled to do Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and I had pretty much my year like kitted out with contract work.
Okay.
And then just literally as soon as like that first lockdown came down, everyone was cancelled. And I had a couple freelance contracts. Like the BBC is great, like they're really loyal. So I managed to have like a couple BBC jobs in, just going to people's houses and, you know, doing kind of filming, you know, garden shows and all those like work from home shows, kitted out. And I did a couple of like the Saturday morning shows at BBC, but most of the work like dried up, which was tough. Luckily, things like picked up in the summer of 2020, and since then I've kind of been working continually. But like that initial stage, that was tricky. How about you, Tola?
Yeah, I had a few kind of acting jobs that I'd auditioned for that were kind of, yeah, like we're gonna postpone it, and then it's like, all right, we're gonna do it in 3 months' time when everything's back to normal, and then 3 months later it's like, it's not back to normal. We'll do it in another 3 months,
Mm.
and so they still haven't. But it's kind of quite nice that I've had all this time to do. I've had another some other projects. I do a lot of like facilitation, teaching, so I focused on that a little bit more, which has been really interesting. But it's almost quite nice to know that it's like when the pandemic does finish and it is over, I've got like 3 or 4 short films that are gonna finally shoot.
Mm.
And I'm like, oh, guys, so I've got those to look forward to as soon as everything goes back to normal, which is quite nice.
But you're doing a comedy workshop at the moment, aren't you, online?
So
Loads of laughs?
So I was doing that. Unfortunately, it kind of didn't go ahead for a few different reasons, kind of technical things. But yeah, that's something that I'm kind of really excited about. Is teaching again as a facilitator. We all actors, we do loads of workshops and things like that, which are really great. I think that I've not gone to drama school. I studied English at uni with lots of drama on the side, but it's one of those things with drama schools, isn't it?
Mm.
You always feel like you need to go. One of the things that I really love, kind of a saying that I picked up, is it's like a toolbox, right? If you go to drama school, you're paying for that complete toolbox all in one set. Whereas if you don't, you kind of end up making that toolbox yourself, right? You kind of go and learn from one person from a year, and you get your spanner, and you go somewhere else and you get a hammer from doing 6 months, or just doing random short films. And as a teacher as well and a facilitator, that kind of means that my brain works in a way where whenever I'm in a workshop learning from someone, there's a bit in my head that's always going, also, how would I teach this? How are they teaching it? Why does it work? Why doesn't it work? And I think that really helps as a performer and a creative as well, to understand that, it's like when you're revising and people are like, the best way you can revise is by teaching someone else, right? Once
Yeah.
you're trying to have to grapple with all those concepts in your head and teach them to someone else, it becomes so much more ingrained in your own work.
Mm.
So yeah, I really love all that teaching stuff. And sometimes it doesn't work out, especially in the pandemic. It's really hard to get like a group of people, and money's short and all of that stuff. But it's definitely something, even with Onsen, is something that we, at the moment, we're just really focusing on these sketches and focusing on getting a following. But actually, me and Josh, and something that we don't actually talk about a lot, but I think is one of the reasons that we connect so well and on the same wavelength, is because we both really are passionate about kind of young people and arts for everyone. And the place that we live in is very suburban, kind of North London, very, very nice, but there's actually no real arts venue. We used to have Mount View Theatre School around the corner, but they're now in Peckham. And so there's really nothing here. Like when I was growing up, I'd have to go to the Roundhouse in Camden to go and do all my creative stuff. And so going forwards, like when we can, that's something that I think is really close to our hearts and we do want to do with Onsen, is to have not a well, maybe have a venue one day, but yeah, be producing these comedy nights where we can encourage. That's kind of my dream with the comedy stuff, is all these, kids who maybe get excluded from school or don't do so well academically. And a lot of them are like, yeah, man, I'm the funniest guy on road, innit? You know what I mean? So to go to one of them and be like, well, come and prove it. Like after school, come here, we'll teach you a bit of stand-up comedy. And actually, one of those guys in 5 years' time might be on Live at the Apollo, or quite a few of them, or they'll learn how to film stuff. And I think that's something we're both really passionate about, but we have to sort it out for ourselves first. And even with the collaboration and stuff as well, we want to bring other comics. And, we're very aware that we kind of joke, we're like 1.5 white guys. I'm mixed race, kind of Asian white. But, it's like, especially nowadays, we need those female voices and we need those kind of non-white, black, brown, all of those stories, transgender, we need all of that stuff. And I think that's another reason that some of the stuff we watch on TV is so boring, because actually, even if you don't realize it, like, we're so bored of the, when you get that brilliant chance to see a film like, not that I wouldn't have given it a 10 out of 10, but like Malcolm and Marie on Netflix at the moment, like a story like that where you're kind of like, okay, this is different and it's a perspective that we haven't seen. That stuff's so refreshing and it's so good. And, that's kind of the kind of stuff that we want to do in like 5 years down the line. If we can really kind of capitalize on what we're doing now and have the influence and the power and a bit of money to create those opportunities for other people, especially within comedy, but on a broader sense, that's kind of what we really want to do, actually. But that's really, really
Yeah,
long term.
yeah. Because kind of we both come from education backgrounds, so we've both worked in education for quite a while, and so that's always been something we wanted to do. Even with these projects moving forward and stuff, we're always trying to encourage kind of like we're in the know with like a couple of the local people in the local area. We kind of know like who's interested in maybe trying to dip a toe into media, but maybe not got the confidence for it. And there's been so many people that we've collaborated with and encouraged them to come on projects, just see what it's like. And you know people don't always get that opportunity.
There's a hell of a lot of talent to be nurtured out there, I think, at the moment, and it's needed now more than ever. I don't want to dive into it too much, but what I thought was really interesting is that, like you mentioned, you didn't go to drama school for whatever reasons, and it feels like you both really adamant on kind of setting out your own path and having, like, going back to that idea of control that we talked about earlier, which I think I really rate. And I think the fact that you've gone into facilitating and workshopping without going to drama school actually isn't something that I'd thought about too much, because I think it's great when people can see and learn from others that haven't gone down paths that aren't accessible to them, if that makes sense. So
Totally.
there's so many people, I remember doing my theatre degree, and so many people would come and do these kind of workshops. I say so many, a few of the people that came and did workshops with us, and I'd be like, yeah, but you've not a clue. And we all can't go on and do that next step for whatever reason. And it's making people being able to relate to, I think. Yeah. So I'm really glad that you kind of flagged that.
Yeah.
Experience and authenticity is kind of better than like strategy and like formula and stuff. And so I think that, having that kind of relatability, it is key. It is sometimes more key than just having like the set rules of what it is.
Mm.
And also people who are doing it independently in their own time, to some extent, even if it takes a longer period of time, say they're juggling a job or they're juggling a family or something like that, there's kind of more of a hunger and more of a passion for it maybe than like a condensed, right, you do this for this set period, because you're getting, again, it comes back to the toolbox analogy that Tola was saying, I think. And people like authenticity, and everyone has a nose for it as well.
I think there's a lot to be said to that, and a lot of the other creatives that are in the early stages of their careers that we've been talking to have kind of said the same, really. And we did the first series speaking to people that we knew, and we loved the first series and everyone was fantastic, but we had to reflect on it and realize that, okay, if we keep just asking people that we know, we're going to get a certain type of person coming on the podcast and chatting to us. And that's why we need to put calls out in place to make sure that we're covering different types of people and stories and being representative, because that is so important. But we've talked for so long, and it's been bloody brilliant. And before all these conversations take place, I write a ridiculous list of questions, and I've actually really enjoyed this because I've not particularly stuck to them, and my paper's just been discarded to one side, which is great. But
Great.
one note that we always kind of leave the podcast on is a reflective note. So I just want to ask you both, and you can answer this separately or however you like to.
One word each. We'll do one word.
In unison.
Yeah, in unison. Go for it. I mean, forget a lag or anything like that. No, a tag team kind of approach. But looking back on what you've achieved so far, if you could, what advice would you give to yourself when you first started pursuing a creative career? Dense, I know.
I definitely think, and it will be in the context of this podcast as well, because we've talked about so much, is when we were younger, being more confident to take a plunge and to not care about like how embarrassing things are, because it's always going to be like a bit daunting and a bit embarrassing at the beginning.
Mm.
But the more you do it, the more it just goes away and fades. And actually, people don't find it embarrassing. They kind of give you some credit, and they're like, okay, well, we actually, you're achieving some stuff.
Mm.
And just trying to get out of that mindset is key. I know it's even difficult to do it, younger than younger than this, like teenage years. But if we did that by this point now, we would be X amount further, X amount, where we were. So I think that's definitely my bit of advice.
Yeah, I'd say definitely the same, maybe from a slightly different angle, but even kind of yeah, what you were saying about facilitation and like, well, can people do that? Is that a thing? And when I was younger, I used to be really, really good when I was 15 at just taking that plunge and being like, yeah, no one's helped me, but I'm gonna go and make this film with zombies in my school. Like, I'm just gonna go and do that. And I kind of lost a bit of that, I think, after uni. I went to uni and was like, oh, I'm an academic, I have a degree, oh, I'm better than certain things. And it's taken me another few years after my graduation to kind of come full circle and be like, actually, I need to get back to that version of me that was just like, no, I want to do it. Like, so, no one can tell me not to facilitate a thing or learn from someone or go and make this, because that's what I want to do. And it comes back to what we were saying again about the podcast and Onsen, of like, oh, what if we'd have done this a few years ago? What if I'd started my TikTok 2 years ago and my sister said you should start a TikTok? All of that stuff. And I think it is just like, just do it, because whenever you start doing whatever it is that you want to do, you always have that moment where you look back and you go, oh, I wish I'd done it as soon as I had that idea. Why did I wait for 6 months? I should have just done it. So I think that's, yeah, take that plunge, just do it. Don't worry about what other people think, because they'll probably love it anyway, and just do it.
I think there's nothing worse than looking back on kind of your 15 to 18 or even 21 kind of years and looking back and going, I actually didn't do enough there. I wish I'd done that. And I wish, where would I be now if I'd have done that then? Just a quick one. What do we hope the future holds for Onsen Presents?
Well, definitely we're really looking for the live stuff. So as soon as the world starts opening again, we're going to do live stuff. That's happening. So check out the social pages for that, because we're going to do comedy nights. We're going to do loads of kind of interactive stuff as well. And we got some interesting formats. So serialized formats that aren't necessarily written sketches, but are kind of serialized things where we get guests on and we kind of, alternative kind of interviewing shows, I'd say.
Totally. The live comedy stuff, I think one thing that we always talked about is just getting to know people, right? And I think we're both really looking forward to having some of our own nights where we can collaborate and invite loads of people in to perform and have that safe space to do that, but also to create that space where everyone performs and they have a bit of fun, and then afterwards we can all have a drink and be like, wow, that was great, who are you, tell me your story. And as great as podcasts like this are, and they allow us to do that, I think we all also are raring to like have these conversations for real, face to face, over a drink at a great night. And I think that's what we're really looking forward to, for sure.
I can't wait to get my first kind of drink with someone and plonk a microphone in the middle and actually speak in real time. But honestly, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
Cheers, man.
A lot of your Instagram videos are less than a minute, but the listeners have a great 60 minutes now to actually get to know you guys and what you do. So thank you so much for coming on.
Cheers, Connor.
Thank you for that as well. It's been really lovely chatting with you, man.
Absolute pleasure.
And yeah, really, really great stuff that you guys are doing at Starts and Grafts. I'm really excited for the series 2 and seeing all the other great stuff you guys have got coming.
Cheers.
Yeah, it's great stuff.
Yeah, and we'd love to come back on as well, maybe when we start doing it in person.
Well, yeah, who knows what could happen. I mean, I could always come and host something for you. If you ever need
definitely, man,
a compare or anything, just hit me up and I'll branch out to live events as well.
Yeah.
But cheers. What a way to start the series. A huge thank you to Josh and Sam for coming on the podcast. Please check them out and Onsen Presents on social media. We'll be back with another episode next week, but in the meantime, go ahead and follow us at Starts and Grafts on Twitter and Instagram. I've been your host Connor, Ella's been your producer, and we look forward to seeing you again very soon. But until then, take care.